everyone, I'm Bridgette with PotomacBeads.com. Join me today in creating these fun in and out earrings using brick stitch. If you don't know how to brick stitch, just join anyway. It's an easy stitch and easy to learn. I'll show you the ins and outs of it. If you need any of the materials, they were listed in the beginning of this video as well as down below. They are listed in the description area as well as exact colors that I used. With links to both PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu. So gather up all you need and come create with me. So to begin these earrings, you want to start out by gluing in your chaton into your bezel. This is the size, stone size 39, and then inside that charm bezel here. Now I already glued it in. I just used Loctite. You can use super glue glue or whichever glue you have on hand. And we're going to attach that at the end. So we're not going to attach it now. So just set it aside and let that kind of dry. So the reason I called it the in and out earring is because we're going to be doing brick stitch both along the outside of this frame and the inside. So if you can see, the frame is just kind of right in the middle there. So we have both the in and the outside. We're going to start by doing the outside border. So I have my 1.8 millimeter cubes here. And this whole earring is just using brick stitch. So if you haven't done brick stitch before, it's actually a really easy stitch to learn. So don't be afraid. You can definitely learn it here. And once you have it down, it's just really simple and you can use it in a lot of different ways. So you're gonna start by, actually I'll tell you, I already tied a knot here, just a regular right over left, left over right box knot. And then just make sure it's flush with that little link there. And then you're going to start by picking up 2 of your cubes. And I have about a wingspan worth of thread. It's probably going to be more than I need, but just to be safe, it's kind of my go-to amount. So what you're going to do is pull these down, and you're going to use your needle, go through the frame and pull this, and then you're going to go up through the second cube the opposite direction that the thread is coming. So here's the knot, and the thread is going to the right of the cube, and I'm going to go up the opposite way and pull that. So then you can see that these are going to kind of sit straight on there. Now to get the first kind of stitch to sit straight, we're going to go through this first cube. So down through the first cube. And then back up through the second cube. So then you see they lay straight next to each other. Then you can kind of push it back and pull it tight. So there we have our first kind of beginning stitch. So from here on out, we'll only be picking up 1 bead per stitch. So we'll pick up our 1 bead and let it fall towards, let me move this out of the way. It's the only problem with using a lot of thread. And again, we'll go through from the back to the front through our frame, and then up through that bead, going the opposite direction of the beginning thread. So we're going to go up. And we'll pull that tight, and it'll fall right next to those others. So again, you pick up 1 bead and go through your frame, and then up through your bead, going the opposite direction of the thread. And you'll pull that tight. And there we go. And we'll just keep going around. So again, pick up your one bead, go through your frame, and then you'll go up through your bead. And then pull it tight. So you can see the way this stitch works is they all just will go a line together. And when you're on your next row, which I'll show you when we get there, you'll see that, let me pull this up. The next row is in the center of those beads. So it's like how a brick wall works. So the second row goes kind of through those edges of the next bead, or of the first layer. So it looks, so for those of you who've never done brick stitch, that's where it gets its name, because it looks exactly how you would form a brick wall. So I'll do this a couple more times so that you all can get the hang of it if if this is your first try with the brick stitch. So again, you're picking up your bead and you're going through the frame from the bottom towards you. And then we're going through the bead the opposite direction of that beginning thread. And then just pulling tight. And it'll lay nicely up against that bead. And so we're going to do this all the way around the frame until you get to the other side where that loop is. So just that same stitch with your cubes. There we go. All the way around until we get to this side. As you can see, we're doing our first little layer here, and then we'll jump up to the seed beads. All right, so I'll catch you back once we're over here. Okay, so we just have a few more beads to put on here. So I just wanted to show you all one more time. You're picking up your bead, going through the frame, and then up through your bead again. And I kind of wanted to show, as I tighten this, you can kind of see exactly what's going on with the thread. So, for those of you new with this stitch, here's the original thread going through the bead and then looping around. And here you can see it coming out that opposite side and just pulling it tight. So if you do go through your bead the wrong way, you'll notice right away. So it's not something that you'll mess up and then have to take apart the whole entire thing. So you're going through, and whereas you want to go, through the opposite way, if you accidentally go up, going the same way, I'll kind of show you. The bead ends up landing on the side with the hole going sideways instead of the hole going up and down. So if you accidentally do that, you'll know right away. And so you can just go back through and then correct it going the right way through. So if you're just starting out and you can't really remember which way you're going, you'll know right away if you accidentally go the wrong way. So don't worry about that. and it's an easy fix. And there we go. So let me just add about, probably about 2 more on here. So again, going under and through the frame, and then the opposite way through that cube. Oops, as it gets away from me. And then pulling tight. Actually, I'll probably just stop there. So it's up to you whether you could probably fit another one in there. But the thing with brick stitch is if it's a little tight, it's gonna kind of make all the others go a little wonky. So you kind of do want to give it a little bit of room, especially as we add on the next row there. So here we are coming up out of that last bead. And let me actually make some space and get my 11-ohs. And I'm just using the Duracoat galvanized champagne. And again, that's size 11. So here, what we're gonna do is, actually let me zoom in so you can see where I am. Let me focus this so you can see. There we go. Okay, so here you'll see our stitch in between our beads, our cubes. So what I'm gonna do, here I am, I'm coming up out of this last bead, and I'm gonna take my needle and go underneath this stitch. Oops. So I'm gonna try and keep it in focus there for you because this part is a little tricky. So you're going underneath that first stitch. And then here, we're gonna start our brick stitch. So just like with the cubes, I'm picking up 2 of my seed beads. And I'm gonna have those fall. And going through the next stitch, so you went through that one, so going through the second stitch here, and then going up through the second 11 here, and again you're going that opposite direction and pulling that tight. And just like we did before, I'm gonna go through, so go down my first bead and then up through that second one. Oh, if I can get it. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it in focus since it's so zoomed in for you all. There we go. And now that we have those kind of anchored off there, we can start our brick stitch. So just like in our first row where we added the bead and then we went around the frame, instead of going around the frame, we're going underneath that stitch. So I'll pick up my 11 and going through that next stitch there, and pulling that, and then going up the opposite direction of the thread through that 11. So it's the same stitch that we were doing. It's just instead of going around the frame, we're going through that stitch between the cubes. So again, picking up your bead, going through or underneath that stitch and pulling that tight, or not tight yet, going up through your bead and then pulling it tight. And again, it'll lay with the holes going up and down. So again, one more time, Picking up your bead, going underneath your stitch, and then going up through your 11. Oops, I got a little bit tangled. Going up through your 11, again going the opposite way of your thread. And then you can pull that tight. What I like to do with brick stitch is just kind of pinch your beads and then pull your thread tight, because that'll kind of get it through. There we go, back in focus. So again, I'll show one more time and then we'll keep going around the rest of our frame. So we're going to pick up our 11-0, go underneath the stitch between the cubes, and then going up the opposite direction of the thread, going up your bead, and then pulling that thread tight. And it'll lay nicely right next to the others. So again, we're going to go around the rest of this frame, just going through all those stitches up until we get over to our last side over here. All right, so I'll meet you there. Okay, so I just finished my second row of my brick stitch, and I'm coming out of this last 11-0 here on the end. And I'm going to go into our third row, which is adding this nice little embellishment with my 15s. So this isn't going to be brick stitch. I'm just going to go in and out of each of my 11s. So what I'm going to do is pick up, each time pick up 3 15s, and then, so I'm coming out of that last 11 there, and I'm going to go down through the next 11. And pull that. Oops. So it gives it that nice little loop there. And then from there, I'm going to go up the next 11. And then add 3 more of my 15s. And then down the next 11 in the row. So I'm coming up out of here. I'm going to go down the next one. And pull that. Okay, so again, just up and down all the way around until you get to the other side, oops, of our frame. So going up through this one, adding my 3 15s, oh, that was 4. There we go. And then down the very next 11. Oops. So just back and forth. Until we have the whole edge done with this nice little edging. So again, 3, down, and pull. Okay, so we'll just do that all the way around. Okay, so I just finished putting on my 15s, and if you have, like I do, an odd number of 11s, so if you can see, I kind of have this one kind of lonely 11 there, not really doing anything with the 15s. I'm just going to add 1 15 and go back down that same bead. So then it has a little bit of, you know, that edging. So so it doesn't just kind of stand out alone there. So you can either just leave it as it is, or if, like on this one, I had an even number, so they all have the embellishment all around the sides. So you can kind of, if you do have an odd count, you can either just add 115 and go through, or just leave it as is. So this next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start doing the inside part, which is why when I was doing my colors, I didn't think about the crystal with the white background, so that's why I have it on this little brown piece right here. But I'm using the silver line crystal so that you all can see it there. And so what we're gonna do is kind of work our way down to the third cube here, and that's where we're gonna start the inside. So I'm gonna go through this first cube here, and then just up through that next one. Here, I'm gonna flip it over. Just up through that second cube. You might have to kind of work your needle in there a little bit. Or if you want to tie a knot and then just start with a fresh bit of thread, you can do that as well. Or if you don't have enough thread, you can just tie a knot and start with a new. Okay, so here I'm going up through the second one. I'm going to come down through this third one. There we go. Okay. Now I have a size 10 needle. It might be easier, well, it would be easier to use a 12 since we are going kind of in and out, but it works fine with the 10, so whichever one you really prefer. So here, I'm coming out through this third one, and if you want to kind of have an eye of where you want to start, you can kind of lay down your bezel there. And kind of see where you want to start. So if I bring this over, you can kind of see there's a gap from where we start so that it fits this part, the top part of the bezel. So if you want to either attach your bezel now, you can do that. I find that when it's attached, it just kind of gets in the way, but it moves, so it's up to you. But as I'm just kind of eyeballing it and see it's about the third one in, and then I can start my 2 rows on the inside. So you can just kind of eyeball it and see where you want to start. And I'll put that back over there. So again, we're gonna be doing the brick stitch again. And since we're on the inside, it's gonna be a little bit tricky trying to find out the spacing. But once you kind of get the hang of it and kind of see where they're spaced together, you'll see it all kind of fits. So we're going to start by adding 2 of our cubes here, because we're starting off with that, and then going through the ring here. And what you want to do is when you notice these stitches here on the inside, you want to keep those in mind while you're putting your needle through. So I'll kind of measure and see where these lay. So I'm going to go in between those 2 stitches, and sometimes it helps to put your project down because it is kind of tight in between those cubes, and then just kind of get your needle through there. Okay. There we go. So this is kind of like in the beginning when we were doing the first set of cubes. You're going around the ring and then up through that first bead and pulling that tight. And then to anchor down the other bead, you're going to go down just the bead, and then up through that first bead again. And then just kind of pinch and pull it tight. And then we have our starting brick stitch there. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pick up one more. And pull that down. And you can kind of see where it lays and between which stitch you want to go. So let me pull this up so that you can see better what I'm talking about. So, oops. So we have our cube coming down, and you kind of eyeball where it's going to lay and in between which stitch of these it's going to go. So this one kind of fits in between these two. So I'll go ahead and put my needle through. And it's not through the stitch, it's just through those cubes so that I can get around that frame. So we're gonna go through, and let me pull. And see, this part actually would be a little easier with a 12 needle, just because those first cubes are a little tight. So you can do what I just did, was I just grabbed some pliers here to pull my needle through. So here I'm going around the ring, and I'm going to go up through my cube, going the opposite direction of that starting thread. And I'm going to pull that. And then tighten that. Okay? So again, we're going to pick up a cube and go through. We're going to figure out which stitch this cube's going to fit through, or fit in between. You can kind of see, I'll skip over that one stitch and go in here and go between those cubes. And then if you need your pliers, I should just switch to a smaller needle, but this works too. And so I'm going around my ring there. Oops, I picked up the wrong thing. There we go. So again, I'm going around my ring, and then up through that cube, again going the opposite direction of the thread starting out. So it's the same stitch, just on the opposite side of the ring. And really on this inside, all you have to think about is, or are those stitches, because that will hold your thread from moving. So you just want to make sure the spacing is right with your cubes that you're adding on. So again, I'll add my cube, get it to go down. There we go. And you can kind of see where it'll fit. And so I'm going to go through these two stitches here. So kind of pushing my needle through those cubes. And so that's going around the ring. There we go. And then coming up through that cube, going the opposite direction. And then pulling tight. So we're going to go all the way around till about the same distance. So we'll make our way up here till about like there's 3 of those, our first row of cubes. So that's where we're going to stop. and then we'll start our second inside layer. Okay, so I have my first inside row done with my cubes. As you can see, I have them spaced out so that when we put our bezel in there, it'll fit nice and perfectly. So the reason I have it zoomed in again is so that we can see the stitches. So coming up out of this kind of last bead over here, I'm going to go through this, the first stitch in between these two cubes, just so that we can get my starting point correct. Okay, so from here, I'm going to be adding, I have my 11-ohs back, so I'm going to be starting off the stitch with 2 11s. And then going through that second stitch between those cubes. So again, just like we did on the second row, we're using that stitch as what we're going under and through. And then back up through that second seed bead, going the opposite direction. Oops. There we go. And then so that that first bead lays flat, we're going to go down just that 11. Oops. There we go. Maybe. Let me turn that around. It's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. So down just that first 11 and then up the one we already went up through. And then once we pull tight, they'll kind of start laying correctly. And again, you can kind of pinch those and then pull tightly. So there we go. All right, so again, we're going to pick up 1 11, and we're going to go through that stitch between the cubes. So just going down below, and then up through that bead. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip this over, and just holding that position's a little easier for me. So whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so since I flipped, I'll do it a couple more times. So again, picking up an 11-oh, and then going through that stitch that's in between the cubes, and then going up the 11 the opposite direction of the thread. All right, so one more time, picking up an 11, oops, going below and through that stitch between the cubes and coming up through that 11. And again, to tighten it, just pinch so that you're not pulling all of the beads. So I'm going to keep going with that. There we're in focus. So keep going. Oh, again, picking up one bead, going through that stitch between the cubes and going up the opposite direction of the thread. And so I'm going to go all the way up to this last stitch here on this side. All right, so I'll see you there. All right, so I have my last row all set. And here I am coming out of that last bead. And what I'm going to do to knot this off is going down through the second bead. So here I am coming out through that last one. I'm going to go down through the one next to it. Oops. And then also down through, I'm just going to flip it over here. And then down through either one of those cubes as well. Just like, oops, sorry, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and knot it. So I'm going to go just going through, so in between those two silver lined, and then up through the next side. So the next two set of cubes, I'm going to come up through and then just go through my loop and go ahead and knot it there. All right, and then I'm going to do that one more time just so that I know it's secure, and then I'll burn down my thread. So pull that tight, and I'll get my thread burner and burn down this extra thread here. So there we go. We have our finished brick, well, not quite finished, but finished with the brick stitch on our earring. And I have my jump rings, and I actually only need one, and I have my bezel, which has been drying while I was doing my brick stitch. So let me grab, I have a pair of pliers. I actually have two of them to pick up and open this jump ring here. I'm going to go through my bezel and then through my frame. And from there, you can go ahead and close that jump ring. And make sure that's closed nice and tightly and straight. And there we have it. We have our inside out earring. So from here, all you have to do is get on your ear wire and you're good to go. Thanks again for joining me in creating these in and out earrings. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and as always, I'd love to hear from you and love to see how this inspired you and how you kind of changed it up and made it your own. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to get any notifications on tutorials like these and others, as well as any new product spotlights or anything like that we have for you. Also remember, if you do need any of these materials, they are listed down below me, beneath me in the description area. You'll find a full list of exact colors I used, as well as links to both PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu. So again, thanks for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.